Hey everyone, happy Thursday, December 8th. For today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast, we're going to preview the back-to-back that the Penguins have coming up. Another one. They just can't get rid of these back-to-backs. The Penguins are usually not bad in the first half, but the second half, that's when it usually gets dicey. We're going to preview both games here, even though they're both against Sabres, how the Penguins can win both of them, how they can slow down Tage Thompson. Also look at some of the other offensive threats that the Sabres have, look at how they've been doing this season, and we'll also get into some practice updates for the Penguins, what lineup you will likely see for both those games, which goalie will start and which one. We'll also get into Kris Letang and how he might be inching closer to a return from his stroke. So look for all of that right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LNRSO Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. I am really feeling it right now. I have a brutal cold. It's hilarious. So 1 week after I move here, and I'm already sick as a dog. And I don't usually get sick this much. But it feels like everyone I talk to right now has been dealing with something, flu, not really a lot of COVID, but flu, cold, other stuff. I guess it's just that time of year we know when these viruses are really making a return, just because we're a few years into the pandemic, so everything is just coming together now. So just take care of yourselves, wash your hands, stay healthy. I'm definitely trying to. That's for sure. I'm recording this with a very stuffy nose, and my voice definitely not the same. But hey, there's a podcast to record here. I apologize for an episode on Wednesday. I felt a lot worse yesterday. Today, a little bit better, but not as good as I want it to be. But let's get into it here. So the Penguins will play the Sabres on Friday night. They will then come home to play the Sabres again on Saturday night. I'm potentially going to look for tickets to that game if I'm actually feeling a lot closer to 100% right now. If I were going to go, I would say no, because I'm not feeling good right now. But I am going to potentially look to see if I can get some cheap tickets for that game. I will definitely be at the game though on Monday against Dallas Stars. So if you are going to that game, let me know. Love to meet up with you and talk some Penguins hockey. Then I should be going to the game against Carolina that next Thursday, from what I recall correctly. So there's my little schedule there. As for the Sabres, they are coming off a 9-4 drubbing of the Columbus Blue Jackets. That actually might be the worst loss in Blue Jackets history. They were down 6-0 at the end of the first period. Tage Thompson also scored a hat trick in 12 minutes. I've been watching a lot of hockey throughout my life. It's rare when you see a player score 3 goals in 12 minutes. Heck, he had 4 goals in the first period. And then he had 5. He had 5 goals and not even halfway through the second period. Everyone was hoping he was going to go for the NHL record, which was 7, which was set back, I think, in 1920 something. It was not even Wayne Gretzky or anyone like that. It was set a long time ago. But he only played like a few minutes in the third period, and it's like, you know what, Buffalo, you guys are a bunch of cowards for that. I wish he would have played a little bit more so he could get a double hat trick or potentially tie or break the NHL record. But 5 goals is something you really do not see every day. I know I've seen Johan Franzen do it about a decade ago. A couple of other players, I think, during this generation have done it as well. But the one that sticks out to me is Johan Franzen, obviously. And, Tage Thompson, Mike Sullivan said it best today. He's like, he got a question from one of the media members. How are you going to win this game? He goes, well, we don't want Tage Thompson to score 5 goals. That is basically, that's it, Mike. I mean, and you know what? Thompson, he's killed the Penguins over the years. It's almost every time these two teams play, it's Thompson scores. So the Penguins are going to have to be on a high alert for him. I will say this about him. When he signed that contract over the offseason, remember, 7 years, what was it, $50 million? I said it best on my Twitter account. I'm like, $7 million for a guy who had 1 good season, really high shooting percentage. Before that, didn't really show anything about being that kind of player. Tage Thompson said, screw you, Hunter. Screw you, the rest of the people that were dunking on me. I'm going to go out there and not only repeat what I did last season, but do it at a higher level. He has been electric for the Sabres this year. I will gladly eat crow on that. That actually might be one of my biggest old takes exposed tweets right there when it comes to the Tage Thompson contract. He has been everything and so much more for the Sabres. He is priority number one for the Penguins. He is centering that top line right now with Jeff Skinner and Alex Tuch, both players who are also having good years. Second line, Jack Quinn, Dylan Cousins, and then John Jason Peterka. This is the thing about the Sabres. You go down their lineup: Casey Mittelstadt, Tyson Yost, Victor Olofsson, Payne Krebs, Kyle Oposo, Zemgus Ferguson's. Excuse me. Their forwards are not bad. I like their top six. Their top line is pretty nice. Outside of that, though, their defense is a bit shaky, and they've gotten horrendous goaltending throughout basically this entire season. They are basically what I was thinking Ottawa was going to be this season. Like the Senators, good forward group, bad defense, meh goaltending, but they're fun to watch. And that is basically what you can describe the Buffalo Sabres as. They're fun to watch for the first time in probably 8 or 9 years at this point. They have good young forwards. Their defense, outside of Rasmus Dahlin, is a little bit shaky for my liking. I know Owen Power is going to turn into a good player as well, but Dahlin is really showing why he is the number one overall pick. Owen Power, not there just yet, but he's still relatively young. But the rest of that defensive core, not the greatest. But then the goaltending tandem, which consists of Craig Anderson and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, not the best. I'm not really sure which goalie the Penguins are going to see on Friday. It'll be one of the two. The Penguins, they'll have the goaltending advantage, I think, in both those games. It's all a matter of, can they get the saves and can they limit Tage Thompson from scoring? Buffalo overall this season, when you look at the standings, they're not in playoff contention. They're really towards the bottom of the Atlantic, 12-13-1, though. It's funny, they're only 6 points out of fourth in the division behind the Red Wings. They're only 8 points behind the Lightning, but they're also 4 points from being in last behind the Ottawa Senators. So, they are towards the bottom of that division. I don't think they're a playoff team just yet. I think they need to make a few more moves to get to that status. But, all that matters with them is they need to show some progress this year and start, really getting a move on this rebuild, because they were rebuilding for so long. That didn't work. And then they did a rebuild of that rebuild, and that's slowly starting to come together because they do have some pieces there from that rebuild that are playing well right now. Heck, Tuch and Peyton Krebs, they're doing well. From the Eichel trade, obviously Tage Thompson, he came in the O'Reilly trade. Other than that, from the O'Reilly trade, no one else is still on the Sabres. Dahlin is awesome. He can really move the puck. He's been killing it for my fantasy hockey team this season. And excuse me. And Jeff Skinner, he's also he's been having a good year on that top line. He makes a lot of money, but he's still a pretty decent sniper. And then Dylan Cousins, he's a pretty solid second line center as well. Victor Olofsson, good on the power play for them. So for the Penguins, slowing down Tage Thompson, that's priority number one. Getting traffic in front of their goalies because their goaltenders have not been good this season, and just winning the special teams battle. The penalty kill's been really good lately. I think the power play is really starting to heat up. If they're able to do all those things, I think the Penguins can not only win one of those games against the Sabres, but I think they can win. Excuse me. I think they can win both of them, even though the Penguins have not been good in the second half of back-to-backs. They're 1-4-1 this season on the second half of back-to-backs. Just not good enough there for the Penguins. But that wraps up this small little preview of the back-to-back this week. And coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into some more stats regarding this matchup. We basically already previewed it, but I do want to go into just some overall stats from the Penguins' perspective and how they usually play really well up in Buffalo. But before I get to that, BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest, easiest way to get your betting fix. You can head to the website today or to use your mobile device to learn more. That has BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at Illinois Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Sorry about that. I had to mute myself for that small cough. But going into some stats, Penguins related for how they play up in Buffalo. They have played in their last 11 games up at the KeyBank Center. The Penguins, they've won 7 of the 11. They've also gotten points in 9 of those 11 games. They've also outscored the Sabres 38-24, and they're 13 for 28 on the power play. So, with the power play really heating up as of late, I think, again, that's going to be a big factor for me when it comes to the Penguins potentially not only winning the game on Friday, but winning the game on Saturday as well. And of course, I just totally screwed up my stats there, and my email. I X'd out of it, which is just awesome. That is how it is going right now. But we are back and everything is good. The Penguins also have points in 16 of their last 18 visits to Buffalo, dating back to March 30th of 2012. 13-2-3 record at the KeyBank Center over the last decade. The Penguins are usually very dominant against the Sabres. Last couple of years has been the case. The Sabres have been playing, a lot better against the Penguins. The Sabres actually won 2 of the 3 matchups last season. They've obviously won the first one this season, which came during the 7-game losing streak. The Penguins, that was probably one of the worst the third periods that they played. They were up 3-1. They were up 3-1 going into the third period, and then they just allowed 5 goals and just stopped playing. Basically, the Penguins, they have been a lot better on the road as of late, 6-0-1. So started out some road struggles, but lately they have been playing a lot better. Obviously, Sidney Crosby, he has been electric right now. He was only one of 3 players in the top 20 in scoring at the age of 30. He ranks first in 5-on-5 points. He was tied for 5th in overall points with David Pastrnak just a couple of days ago. He is absolutely killing it right now. And the Penguins, they've also won 10 of their last 14 games. 10-2-2 before that. The first 12, they were 4-6-2. Before November 9th, but since then, they basically saved their season at this point. That's how I see. After that 7-game losing streak, they needed to have a stretch like this if they wanted to get back into the playoff race. They did, and right now, they're feeling the effects of that as they are, tied for 3rd right now, and have the tiebreaker of the Islanders just because they have a game in hand over them. So, those are a few of the stats that I have been looking at for this game. I'm really excited to watch them play against the Sabres. This is, even though it's a young team and it's a rebuilding team, these are games that the Penguins, they have to win just because they're below them in the standings. But, there are no gimme wins in the NHL. I caution against that. Remember last Friday with the St. Louis Blues, the Penguins went out there, they blitzed them 6-2 at PPG. I think this game is going to be a lot closer, and I think the Saturday game is going to be a bit closer as well. In terms of, which goalie I would start for this, I think you're just because they may want to secure the first win on Friday, I think they're going to go Jari on Friday, DeSmith on Saturday. They could just flip it and go DeSmith on Friday, then maybe just go for the win on Saturday just because they'll be at home. But if you're asking me, I think they're going to go Jari on Friday to get the sure result or try to get the best result they can. And then DeSmith on Saturday, even though they'll have some tired legs. But the Sabres will also have some tired legs, so there won't be any excuses, I think, from both teams. They'll both be playing on a back-to-back. And, those home-and-home series, I think they're fun on back-to-back nights. I think the NHL, when they tried something new a couple of seasons ago, remember with like the mini-series games like you see in baseball, they played one night. 2 nights later, they played another game against them. That was cool. But I think a back-to-back, it just feels more smooth. I know the hockey isn't as good, but I still think it's it's fun. I think that there's going to be some chippiness when it comes to this, and it definitely should be a lot of fun. As for practice notes, obviously the big news of the day today was Kris Letang coming back to practice in a regular jersey, so he has been cleared for contact. Now, do I think he's going to be playing in the next week or something? Probably not. I think they're not going to rush anything. I think he's probably a couple weeks away. If you had to ask me, I think it's hard because I think Tanger knows when he wants to come back. It's all a matter of, getting the doctor's approval, which, that's the biggest thing right now. If I had to guess, he'll be back by the Winter Classic, which is January 2nd against the Boston Bruins. That could be his targeted return date. Could he return sooner? Sure. But, based on what he said today and he was practicing, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later in the next 2 to 3 weeks that he's going to be back playing. And, Letang, he had a really interesting quote today, courtesy of Taylor Hossey of DK Pittsburgh Sports. He said, "Stroke is a scary word. I'm lucky that we have the staff that we have. I know that I'm in very good hands. I'm lucky that these things resolve on their own and I can go back to a normal life. Hockey is a big passion for me, and it's going to take a lot to drag me out of it." So that right there should I think send a message to everyone out there who is just trying to be medical doctors on Twitter saying like, oh, he should retire and all this stuff. Guys, that's not Letang. That's not him. He wants to play. He even just said it's going to take a lot more than that to get him out of the game for good. It's his life. At the end of the day, I can have my own opinion on it. You can have your own opinion on it. Bob in New Jersey can have his own opinion on it. But when it comes down to it, Kris Letang, he wants to play. He's committed to it. And, he knows his body better than anyone. And, I'm going to respect the decision that he makes. I was going to say that if he walked away from the Penguins, it would obviously sting just because he has so much, he still has more to accomplish, I think. But I would have respected it just because, he wants to live a normal life. He has a wife, he has friends, he has kids, but he thinks he can do all of that while still playing hockey. More to him. And the Penguins doctor also spoke to the media today. Dr. Vias, I think is how you pronounce it. He's been with the organization for years now. I think he's been there since I was in high school. And he even said his stroke this time was much smaller than it was last time. His symptoms have resolved a lot quicker than they did the last time as well. We know what to expect. The data has also evolved in terms of how this hole in his heart is to be treated. He said it is not the sport that create the problem for him. We don't think that playing the sport itself is risky for him. Remember, it was confirmed way back when we had his first stroke, about almost a decade ago, that he was born with the hole in his heart, and that it was revealed that he was going to close on its own. Playing hockey, he's not going to do any more damage to it or anything like that. So that is what Dr. Vias is saying there. And he also said he is always surprised as to how well he heals. We don't think this is accelerated in any way. We're taking all the right precautions to make sure he is safe to go out and play. And when that time comes, we will let him go out to playing his sport. So yeah, he still has hurdles to go. He's going to keep, getting tested. He probably has not been cleared for full contact yet, even though he did practice with the team. I'm sure he's on the road trip with them. Maybe he'll take the morning skate on Friday. But again, I think he's probably 2 to 3 weeks at best from returning to the lineup. He's not playing this weekend, that's for sure. But the lines that you saw today, Ryan Poehling is skating on the fourth line in the place of Josh Archibald. I am not sure if he's going to be playing tomorrow. I don't think Mike Sullivan had that big of an update on him during practice, but the lines you'll see for the game: Gensel, Crosby, Raquel, Zucker, Malkin, Rust, McGinn, Carter, Kapanen, Poehling, Bluger, Heinen, Pedersen, Petrie, Dumoulin, Ruta, and I'm sure you will see POJ and Chad Ruedel on the bottom pairing with Letang was rotating there. But I think that's the lineup that you'll see. If Archibald is deemed healthy, I do think you'll see Heinen come out, if I had to guess. But maybe it's Poehling if he's not ready to play. Who knows? But, that's the lineup that I think you all should expect to see for the Penguins tomorrow. Again, unless Archibald is deemed healthy to play. But, Mike Sullivan didn't really have an update for him. I'm sure he'll have an update after the morning skate tomorrow. I think that actually might do it, though, for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening. I apologize if this is a bit of a shorter one. It's just, I am really feeling it right now, but I had to give you all an episode, and I'll have another one for you all on Friday to fully recap the game against the Sabres, and then, preview the Saturday one and look to see, what mistakes the Penguins can rectify to going into that game, what they did well to make sure they do, even better going into that game. This is going to be a bit of a different episode because, I can just preview that game the next day and just talk about stuff they did versus stuff they didn't do as well, and just go over some individual player performances and anything else that really got to my mind as well. So again, thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I will talk to you all on Friday.